Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Idea Gen Global Podcast with George Sifakis.
I'm George Sifakis. In a world overflowing with noise, there is one forum where the world's smartest voices connect, where visionaries sit at the same table as innovators, and great minds don't just talk, they act.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. With all of these events unfolding in Georgia, I thought it would be good to get a first-hand perspective. That's why I called on my good friend C.J. Pearson. He's, of course, the host of the C.J. Pearson Show, a podcast and audio program that is heard across the country. I'm a fan. He's a longtime conservative commentator and activist, ran a valiant campaign in Georgia for the legislature, and remains a vital voice on the right. And he's still a very young man, so he has a great future. CJ, thanks for joining us.
Roger, thank you so much for having me.
So let's kind of start from the beginning. We had this FBI raid on the Fulton County Board of Elections warehouse. This is after Fulton County refused 3 polite requests from the Department of Justice to turn over election records. Why in the world would the elections board or Fulton County officials not turn over records requested by the Department of Justice and the FBI if they have nothing to hide?
Roger, that's the exact question that millions of Georgians are asking here today. And I think the Democrats are in many ways telling on themselves by refusing to just simply answer these requests and to just, embrace transparency in this. If they have nothing to hide, why are they so upset about the FBI's actions? At the end of the day, it's so interesting to me that they're trying to frame this as a political action and try to frame, Tulsi Gabbard's involvement in this situation as political, when actually the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, is tasked with securing the integrity of our elections. That is within her charge and within her duties. And so, this is something that I think has been a long time coming. I don't care if it's 6 years, 8 years later. At the end of the day, the American people deserve to know that their elections actually matter, that they count, that they are secure. And I'm glad to see the FBI taking the measures they've taken to bring these questions to rest.
I have to give credit to the mainstream media and the Democrats that pulled their chains. At the time, they did a superb job of suppressing any reasonable question about the elections. Again, the big lie. Trump brought as many as 60 lawsuits, and they were all defeated, when in fact, virtually every one of those lawsuits was dismissed on some technical grounds, usually standing, questionable rulings. But the evidence of election fraud in Michigan, in Georgia, in Nevada, in Arizona, never actually got examined in a federal courtroom.
No, you're exactly right. None of these cases were actually dismissed on the merits of the evidence, many of which were dismissed based on things like standing, like you said. One of those lawsuits, actually, which was filed by, the Sidney Powell, Pearson versus Kemp, actually, in the state of Georgia, I was incredibly involved in. And that was another instance where they didn't look at the evidence. They didn't look at what we were bringing to their attention. They simply dismissed it because of a procedural and technical issue. And so, no, you're right. Many of these the evidence was never examined by a court of law. And so when the Democrats say, all of these lawsuits were brought, they were all dismissed, it was not because the court said that there wasn't a there. It was because they had some random technicality that they took issue with. And so these questions mean something. They matter because the integrity of our elections matters. That's what separates us from a third world, dystopia in the United States of America. But going even beyond that, it wasn't just the courts and the media colluding. It was also social media. If you question the election on social media, what would happen? You would be banned. You would lose your account. These are the days pre-Elon. I remember, when Parler was taken off of the App Store because they were so upset about what was going on here. And so, this is long overdue to have this transparency. And the fact that the Democrats are so upset and so scared says a lot.
The other great outrage, of course, is the way Jack Smith and the Democrats overturned the formation of an alternative electoral college slate, which has existed throughout our history in the election of 1877, particularly in the election of 1960. When there is a dispute within a state over election returns, a dispute that is supposed to be headed to court for adjudication, you preserve your rights by forming an alternative elective slate. In the event that you ultimately win that court challenge, those electors would then be seated in the Electoral College. Somehow, Jack Smith and his cohorts, particularly those at MSNBC, decided that this was somehow criminal. My good friend David Schaefer, former Republican state chairman there in Georgia, among others, who got jammed up ridiculously. If you read the minutes of the Georgia electors slate meeting, it says at the beginning that they are forming only to protect their legal rights in light of potential litigation. That's not a crime, but they made it a crime. Now, in Georgia, Fannie Wills brought that case, which ultimately collapsed, but those electors in Nevada, such as State Party Chairman Michael McDonald, a great man, or Jesse Law, the former Clark County chairman, both electors, they continue to face charges and will actually have to go to trial to prove that they didn't do anything illegal.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And Roger, I was intimately involved in that situation as I was one of the nominees in 2020 for the state of Georgia. The only thing that prevented me from being prosecuted at the time is that I was away at college at the University of Alabama. Otherwise, I would have been in the same situation in the crosshairs of Fannie Willis as my also good friend David Schaefer was. And it's actually terrible to see how much of government resources and taxpayer dollars were spent going after Americans who were simply trying to stand up for the integrity of our elections. Imagine if those same FBI resources were used and going after the fraud that we're seeing in Minnesota. These wouldn't be new revelations. It wouldn't have taken a Nick Shirley to get to the bottom of what we are seeing there if we actually had an FBI that was geared towards going after real fraud and abuse instead of targeting Americans simply for supporting President Trump and his policies.
Now, Georgia has kind of a different convoluted system for the selection of its U.S. senators that includes a runoff. And in 2020, we lost both of those Senate seats by relatively slim margins. Do you believe that, or is there evidence of fraud or other abuse or irregularities in those elections or not?
You know, I think that's what we're going to learn from these investigations that we're seeing that the FBI is leading right now. And I think, again, if there wasn't a there, I don't think the Democrats would be panicking the way in which they are. I think the fact that they are so resistant to the transparency of this situation, there's a resistance to anyone even looking and asking questions about this, indicates that there's something worth asking. There are questions worth looking for the answers to. And so I think that we'll know that answer soon enough. And I hope and I urge, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and all the good folks at the FBI to do all that they can to get to the bottom of this.
One of the things that disturbs me as I go out, as I know you do, and speak and meet people and do interviews is the defeatist attitude among some Trump supporters and some Republicans about the 2026 election. I think they misunderstand the volatility of American politics today. In this age of absolute hyper mass communications in which everything becomes known instantaneously because of the internet, our politics can change very quickly. Now, it's also interesting that there is a trend. Gallup shows 47% of Americans say they don't identify with either Republicans or Democrats. That is an all-time high number that shows that same mental attitude that I think gave rise to Trump's election in 2016. When the American people got tired of dynasties, they wanted neither the Bushes nor the Clintons. They no longer trusted government. They no longer trusted either party. They no longer trusted the media. That's the most important development. But people began to see that mass media did not always or rarely, tell them the truth. I still think the 2026 elections are up for grabs. I think Republicans will have an enormous financial advantage, and that's important because it takes paid advertising to inform the people that what they're getting on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of the fake news media is false. It allows you to communicate at a higher level to take away that built-in advantage the Democrats have of the fact that their narrative, no matter how phony or thin, will always be reinforced by the fake news media.
No, you're exactly right. I think the fake news media right now is colluding with the left to depress Republican turnout, and we cannot allow them to have their way. You spoke to the cash advantage that the president currently has. He's raised almost $1 billion since his election, since taking office, in 2025 and in January. And I think that's obviously going to be used to help candidates up and down the ballot, and that's going to go a long way. But also the president's going to keep a robust schedule, as Susie Wallace has said. He's going to go across the country, just like it's a presidential election year, and rally to bring these candidates across the finish line. And I think that's going to do a lot. But I also think, too, the president's messaging right now on making America affordable again is going to be the thing that wins us this midterm cycle. People are hurting right now, and I think that they're still going through the brunt of a lot of Biden's economic policies. But I think this coming year, we'll actually see a lot of the Trump policies going into effect, things like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and also just, too, an economy that is in rebound in a way that I think that's going to be experienced by people all across this nation. And I think the president, as he goes across the country, he's going to take that message as surrogates will as well. And I think that what I would encourage people to think about is in the same way that people were downtrodden when an expected red wave was going to happen in 2022 and it was more so a red trickle. I think that with the Democrat Party being where it is and just so rudderless and without having a firm leader, the leader of their party, for all intents and purposes these days, is Zohran Mamdani, I think that we are actually in good shape. We just got to focus on our message, focus on turning out our people, and making clear that midterms matter. Midterms matter, not just presidentials, midterms matter, because if we lose these midterms because people decide to stay at home and rest on their laurels, President Trump will be impeached and he damn near could be removed if we're not valiant.
I think that is exactly right. I was with Vice President J.D. Vance on Wednesday, met with him, and he very clearly sees the importance of the Trump voter as opposed to the Republican voter. There are certain Trump voters out there who vote in presidential years, but they do not turn out in the mid-years, and there could be crucial to the turnout. Now, they used a number of programs to ensure they did turn out in recent special elections, which demonstrates in the laboratory, as it were, that this can be done. But that is one of the keys. The other interesting key is that all of the polling, even some that I suspect is not being on the money, shows the president's base to be intense and intact. Despite some disagreements within the MAGA base, Trump's numbers remained commanding within his base, and that is one of the absolute keys. Ted Kennedy challenged Jimmy Carter for renomination because his numbers on the left base were weak. There'll be no such challenge to Donald Trump. He remains supreme in his party. We're talking to C.J. Pearson right here on The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Roger Stone Show. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to C.J. Pearson, who is the host of the C.J. Pearson Show. C.J., I just noticed that Elon Musk only minutes ago arrived at Mar-a-Lago for the wedding celebration of Dan Scavino, who now heads the Office of Presidential Personnel, a good friend and a Trump loyalist from the 2016 campaign. But increasingly, the tech billionaire is ramping up his involvement ahead of the midterms, now pledging to pour millions of dollars into efforts aimed at helping the Republicans retain control of Congress, according to multiple reports and recent campaign finance disclosures. To me, this is extraordinarily good news. I think that the contribution of Elon Musk may have been determinative in 2024, and despite his brief hiatus, I'm glad to see he is back on the team. Your thoughts?
Mine as well. And I think, history will look back at this and will say this is a great reconciliation, right? I think that this is long overdue. I'm glad to see, the President Elon Musk come back together, because I think they recognize both the grave effect that the left will have if they're able to win back Congress and to stand in the way of this president's agenda over the course of the next 3 years. And so I think Elon's involvement will be critical in maintaining our majority in the House, growing, what we're able to do, of course, in the Senate. And so, it's great to have Elon back in the fold. And I think he'll be, again, a huge factor in what we're able to accomplish this upcoming year.
Other than our founding fathers themselves, it's very hard to name any person who's had a greater positive effect on the free speech and First Amendment rights than Elon Musk. And I say that as someone who was banned on Twitter, banned on Facebook, banned on YouTube, banned on Instagram, banned on Snapchat. To this day, Twitter and Truth Social and Telegram are the only 3 platforms where Roger Stone is allowed to be. And of course, they never tell you why. You just one day you wake up and your profile is gone and you have been canceled. So Elon Musk's contribution to free speech in this country and to transparency, because we now know that effort to censor those who questioned the 2020 election or questioned the efficiency and the safety of the COVID-19 vaccination or questioned Hunter Biden's laptop, that was not indigenous. That was a coordinated effort between executives at these social media platforms and elements of our intelligence agencies in the U.S. government.
No, you're exactly right. And it was a full-on assault, again, on half of America that they knew they could not control. But when you think about what's all happening here, you realize that it just goes to show how insecure the left is. And they can't actually win elections running on their ideas, running on their policies, so they have to restrict our ideas from ever even getting out there. The fact that happened to you, folks like Laura Loomer, and almost anyone who is asking questions, the right questions that may have been before their time, but as time has passed, has shown that you were all proven right. It's very, very telling. And thank God, we have truth tellers and truth seekers like Elon Musk and other folks like him now at the forefront. And we're only growing in that, right? We have people that we have never would have thought would be joining the MAGA coalition today. Folks like Nicki Minaj, who, has embraced the president, called him, said that she was his number one fan. It's an incredible thing to see. And so I think we're only going to go up from here. And that's exactly why I say to the Black Pillars, it's like, stop it. Be confident. Tell your folks to get out and vote, because that's exactly how we're going to take back this country and continue the MAGA movement.
All right, I want to thank our guest, C.J. Pearson. But coming up, former member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, New Jersey Senator Bob Torricelli, joins us to talk about Iran, Venezuela, and Greenland. That's up next. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.